3 years ago, I wrote a Substack about why I left the US and why other people might consider leaving too. Today, I want to review that article and see what the US has gotten better at and what the US has continued to decline in. So let's get started.
Okay, so let's get started here. The first chart that I put in my Substack was just covering life expectancy versus health expenditure. And this chart was from 2018. Like I said, I wrote the article, I think it was 2022. So, but at the time, this was the most recent or most up-to-date data. So let's see, in the US in 2018, life expectancy was about 78 and a half, we'll call it. Today, looks like we have up to 2021. And you can see it is declined slightly. Maybe it's 76, around 76, but the expending has increased. So in that sense, the US has gotten worse. And it's not really about any of these metrics individually, but the picture I'm trying to paint is just that the US is in decline. And I take no pride that it's in decline. I think it's honestly a very sad thing, and I wish that it would reverse. I just want this message to kind of go out to people who are unsure or who think maybe that America is the best country in the world and we're the best at everything. And, maybe that's not the case. And maybe that you could have a better lifestyle if you were to open your mind a little bit and see reality. So if we keep scrolling down here, we see economic prosperity and the shrinking middle class. The middle class has been shrinking for quite a while, largely throughout the world. It's also been shrinking. So this isn't necessarily just a US phenomenon. I'd say it's mostly like a Western country phenomenon, but it does vary per country individually. So the next thing I want to look at here is economic prosperity. If you look at this chart, the data is maybe from 2015, somewhere around there. You can see the middle class is around 45%. And today, or at least in 2020, we can see it's down to 42%. Not that much of a drop. And like I said, it's been dropping for quite a while, but something worth noting. This wage chart, I'm going to skip over because I've changed my perspective on how to measure this. I don't think it's very easy to measure productivity. So I think this chart can be a bit misleading. So I'm just going to skip over that. Up next is safety. At the time when I wrote the article 3 years ago, I think this data was from 2021, I believe. The US was the 81st safest country in the world. Today, if we go to the same worldpopulationreview.com, ranks the US at, it was 85 or 84. I counted it all, but I'm not going to count it yet. Listed here. Up next, under safety, is our incarceration rate. At the time of writing, it was 655 per 100,000 people. I believe this data was from 2021, if I'm not mistaken. Today, you can see the US has gone actually down to 541. So better or worse, depending on how you look at it. Next is homicide rate. So in 2019, the homicide rate in the US was, let's call it maybe 5.5. And I tried to recreate this chart today. This is from Our World in Data. And it's gone up slightly, but the last 3 years have gone down. So it went from 5 or so, and now it is closer to 6. So it was 4.9 in 2018, and now it's 5.8. So it's gone up overall in 2023, but hopefully that will continue to go downward. For police killings, I couldn't find very good data on this, so I'm just going to skip over that and go down to economic freedom. At the time, the United States was the 25th most economically free country in the world, at least according to the Heritage Foundation. More importantly, their score overall was 72.1. If we look at where the US is today, you can see it's dropped down. The score is now 70.2, down from that 72.1. So it's just gotten a bit less free. Overall, the ranking has dropped to 26. So it dropped one place. I think looks like Portugal moved up, maybe Qatar moved down, I'm not sure. So relatively the same, slight drop from 72 down to 70. Tax burden, I don't think it's really changed too much. I'm just going to skip over that a bit. Obesity rate. So in 2016, the US had a 40% obesity rate. This data was also very hard to find updated information on. The best I could find was that now over 40% of the US adults are obese. So relatively the same, but still getting worse. Bitcoin and crypto. When I wrote this, the US was very much against cryptocurrencies in general, including Bitcoin. Now it seems like it's gotten a lot better by far. The only thing I would say that it's gotten worse at, or maybe it stayed the same, is now it's just been politicized. So it seems like most Republican and most people who are conservative are okay with Bitcoin, but people who are liberal, not all, but some politicians, or more politicians on the left, don't like crypto and Bitcoin than those on the right, for sure. So now that it's politically divided, I don't really know what's going to come of it. I mean, I don't necessarily care so much. I mean, I hope that it gets better, but that's one reason why I left the US. Division is very hard to measure, and so I have not been able to find anything more updated than these charts here that just shows the US is more politically divided. I also can't speak from personal experience because I haven't been in the US since I wrote this article. So you can tell me, do you think the United States is more politically divided or less? Everything from what I hear from people who live in the US tell me it's way worse. But let me know what you think about that. Debt to GDP ratio. So in 2020, the US hit a debt to GDP ratio of over 130%. Now it has dropped down a bit to, in 2024, it was 123%, and it's projected to go to 125% towards the end of the year. The thing is, I think that's an interesting indicator, and I do think that statistically, I say it right here, historically, 50 out of 51 countries that hit a debt to GDP ratio of 130% or more have defaulted on their debt in some way. The issue, though, is that he is sort of a easily manipulated metric, or not just easily manipulated, but it's just not a very good metric to go off of. I do talk about this a little bit, but a part of GDP is consumption and also government expenditure. So it's just not a very good way to actually measure a country's economy. What I think is a bit better is measuring in terms of PPP, or purchasing power parity. When it comes to that, the United States is below China by, honestly, a pretty good margin, especially if you look at the previous years and now. Now, I do want to be clear, it's not, the picture I'm trying to paint is that the United States is in decline. I don't think you necessarily need to live in the country that has the highest GDP. But again, I'm just trying to paint this picture of the US in decline. I don't really think it matters too much what the overall country's GDP is, I think what's more important is that it's growing and becoming better actively versus declining. For the rest of the article here, I cover some myths and then do a bit of speculation.
So what do you guys think? Please put it in the comments below. If you like this video, please hit the thumbs up button and subscribe to follow me. I'm on my 9th year of digital nomading while I buy and build businesses to fund my lifestyle.